What's up, design family, and welcome back to another episode of Fit Design TV. So glad to have you guys back on the channel. On today's episode, I'll be looking at whether you as a starter brand should launch both a male and female centered collection when starting out. So you're starting out. Do you need to start with both men's and women's, or do you start with men's? You start with women's. Which is the most profitable? Which is going to get you from point A to point B the fastest and help you to achieve long-term success? Well, the too long didn't read for me is, yes, you should always start off your brand with both genders. If you want to know why, tune into this episode and I'll run you guys through it step by step. Welcome to Fit Design TV. Are you interested in sports fashion, design, and manufacturing? Are you establishing your own brand? You're looking good. Anthony, how are we doing? Do you want to? Thank you. Well, you've come to the right place. Lights, camera, action. Getting right into the episode, I know I mentioned in the beginning that yes, you should start with both men's and women's, but there's a caveat to that. It starts off with understanding your business objectives. If your goal was never to get into women's or men's items, then you should stick to one gender. So understand what your end goal is. If you're a brand that is heavily focused on the masculine, then chances are you should not start with both men's and women's. It's going to distract you. It's going to take away your time, your energy, your resources away from your core demographic. But if at any point in the future you have the intention of bringing in a women's range or a men's range, there's no point in starting with a men's range and then later incorporating. And I'll explain a little bit right now. You have to understand that people buy based on emotion. They buy based on what they feel. They don't buy based on logic. Just because you have a great product and you say, I've started this brand by launching a men's apparel range and we've done really well, we've created great product. Then in 2, 3, 4, 5 years, you decide to launch a women's brand. There's nothing to say that you can actually succeed in this, but you're fighting an uphill battle because you've already established your brand, your marketing, the faces that represent your brand, your messaging as a masculine focused brand. Making that transition from a male-dominated brand into an equilibrium or an equal brand where you have both men's and women's is quite difficult. You're trying to fight against people's perceptions of your brand. So if you set up your brand as a men's-focused brand, going into other directions, whether it's incorporating kids, pets, whatever it may be, again, it's going to be much more difficult than if you started off having that focus on both these demographics. One thing I say is to never neglect either or, right? 80% of consumer spending in 2018 and 2019 was done primarily by women, right? A lot of women are purchasing fashion. They also purchase much more frequently than their male counterparts. That isn't to say that the men's segments aren't growing year on year. Actually, between 2019 and 2020, the men's segment actually noticed the highest increase in year-on-year growth. But in terms of total volume and total sales, it's still, the cake goes to women here. But if you ever have the intention of launching for both demographics, start off and give yourself the best possible opportunity to win the long-term game by setting yourself up as a male-focused or a equal male and female-focused brand. Look at a company like Athlete, right? A company like Athlete started as a male-focused brand. This makes sense because the owner himself is a fitness icon, specifically who's a man. Designing pieces in the early days, he was definitely designing these pieces specifically for himself. What we noticed between 2017 and 2018 is a slow and gruesome transition into the female-focused demographic, right? The first 2 years for Athlete, especially getting into the female range, was very difficult because they're having to undo almost 2 years of backlog data where people are perceiving them as this very hyper-aggressive brand that's represented by Christian Guzman, and creating that transition and convincing women to want to buy from this brand and to take a chance on this brand is a little bit difficult, especially when you've set yourself up a certain way and you have a perception that leans people towards a specific way. It's only after multiple attempts and a lot of money spent that they're able to penetrate that female market and to actually start to offer and to gain tremendous growth amongst the female customer demographic. But they could have avoided this completely by establishing their core business from the get as a male and female focused brand. A company that did this quite well and actually also suffered a similar fate to what Athlete suffered in the beginning is a company like Gymshark. If you look at that name, it was created by two dudes and it has a very aggressive name. It's a name that's not quite approachable for the female, right? For a female audience, but through trial and error and through consistently marketing and creating different product, they were eventually able to penetrate the female-focused demographics. But they could have done this a lot faster by having that long-term vision initially and not only designing pieces that were specifically focused and catered towards the male demographic. Again, this is a case-by-case basis, but if you ever have an intention of going for both genders, then start off with both genders and you'll save yourself a lot of time and energy down the line. Guys, let me know if you agree. Let me know if you would do this strategy any other way. And as always, I always enjoy hearing from you guys what other types of content you want to see in future episodes. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of Fit Design TV. Until next week's episode, stay awesome.